So, what is it like running a death metal label? Do you want some insights into some different experiences in terms of running a label? So, to help answer these questions, I've invited three pillars of the American death metal scene here to have a discussion with us today. And I mean, I run a small label too, but I'm not going to talk much about me today. I'm just going to be very happy to be a fly on the wall, to have these people have a conversation, sit in on this. I don't even know if they've ever talked to each other, met each other before either. So I'm excited for this. So one person joining us is a veteran. So both for running a death metal label and also a literal veteran from the Air Force. So thank you for your service. But one has taken over the reins of a veteran label and continues to fly that flag high. And then the third has really exploded with their label only forming a few years ago. And so each one of them, though, is keeping death metal alive. And each also specialize in completely different areas of death metal. And so I'm excited to see that interaction too, since they might come from very different camps in this niche death metal world that we're all obsessed with. And so I'm thrilled to welcome then Matt from Dark Descent, Ryan from New Standard Elite, and then Ben from Iron Fortress. So I'll introduce each of us with a little bit more detail here in terms of seniority. So Dark Descent Records was founded by Matt back in 2009. This label based in Colorado has become one of the biggest and best when it comes to all things dark and death and doomy and blackened. And so, Matt, can you tell me how and why did you start this label? Did you feel like there was a need, or did you have a need? How did this start?
I mean, the why is pretty easy. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, I mean, almost 17 years now. So it was probably later 2009. Uh, I ran into a guy that where I was stationed in Biloxi. I lived in Biloxi for several years, and he was looking for somebody to help him out with his second label. I guess his second release, he kept getting stonewalled on finding help, and I had a few $1,000 sitting in the bank account. Went through a divorce. So I had more time on my hands than anything at that time. I told him I would help him. That release never came about, but through my ability to fixate on things that I probably shouldn't, I started signing other bands, and it just kind of went from there. So I was still active duty when I started the label. So the first year and a half or so, I was active duty, and until I retired in 2012. So yeah, that's basically it. And now, almost 17 years later, I've got a storage rooms full of shit. I have, I have half a house full of shit, and it's just the way it goes. I'm not, balling like Ben over here, with some big old. I by all accounts, though, I've chosen to keep it this way for a reason. So it's great to see Ben, getting a big space like that, because it'd be nice. But I've chosen a little different path, and I'm staying on that path. So that's the basic story about how it began. So if you surmise anything from that, you can draw that it was an accident more than anything. So, uh, but like, it hasn't ended up this way. In the long run, it all worked out. But yeah, it wasn't really something that I started by design.
It wasn't just a coping thing with the divorce and all that.
No, not at all. Not at all. It was just you know, uh, ideas come, and I usually get myself in trouble, with my mouth first, and then, I have to back it up. And then I started listening to other cool shit that wasn't signed, and started approaching other guys. But, early on it was a little different, though, because nobody knew who I was. I wasn't a scene guy. I didn't hang around a bunch of dudes where I was from, because I was, in the service. I was everywhere. So there was nothing like that. So for me, it was more or less just selling yourself, and selling your ideas to people, and that's what I had to do early on. I had to go out and talk to guys to sign them, and it was a little bit more difficult than it is now, for sure.
So thank you for that response. So a year after you formed Dark Descent, then Dan Osborne founded New Standard Elite. excuse me, New Standard Elite. The label quickly became the top of the heap when it comes to brutal death metal. In 2023, though, Dan Osborne retired from running the label, and then he passed it on to Ryan Baker. So, Ryan, can you tell us some about that transition? Like, how did you get involved in that? Why are you the one to step into that role? And also, has that been kind of difficult to jump into one of the most celebrated brutal death metal labels and carry the flag for that?
Yeah, I've known Dan obviously for quite some time. The background on, a little bit of the background of how he kind of phased out was, it was remarkable that he was able to go as long as he did with 13 years with 2 young kids, 3 moves, having to manage a full-time job and primarily running that label from 6:30 p.m. till 1 a.m., printing all the shirts, getting all the orders out, dealing with bands. Most of the time you get text messages from him. He's in his car, going, back and forth to work. And I think it got to the point where it was just becoming way too much.
Sure.
There were, a lot of times where the number of releases that needed to be out, putting out 6 to 8 at a time, started to cannibalize each other, where he, just basically running out of money to get that many out. So, he approached me, obviously initially out of pure selfishness, because it was, my favorite label, most of my favorite bands were on that. I felt, as far as the brutal death metal scene for New Standard Elite to go away would have been a disaster for the scene as a whole. And, I started talking to him about, some things he wanted to retain, to make sure we were on the same page. It has the ethos of no drum machines, no drum programming, live drummers, only signing, bands in that brutal death metal, genre. And, just transitioned in. I've got a business background, which helped a little bit. And, I've been in the scene now 36 years. So, I think that helps a little bit as well. But, the main thing was just making sure this label continued the way that Dan, established it, founded it, and just continue on.
Awesome. Thanks for those insights. So with each generation, right, we've got a new generation of death metal too. We've got different styles encompassed between all of us here. And Ben decided to tap into that. So Iron Fortress formed in 2022 and has quickly become a platform for young death metal bands, especially including like hardcore death metal, brutal death metal, and death grind bands to find some support. So in a few short years, Ben has put out hundreds of releases. Like, that's crazy in just a few years, quickly establishing Iron Fortress as a rising tentpole in this world of death metal. So Iron Fortress is the place to go for young talent. Even a couple of the bands that were on Suharat, my label, Disrotter and Gourd Embrace, are now with Iron Fortress. And so, Ben, can you tell me some about why you founded Iron Fortress and what were those early days like? And can you tell some? So you're clearly very hungry. You've put a lot into this in a very short period of time. Can you give us some insights about this?
Yeah, I've been a music kid my entire life. I was playing in bands in the early 2000s and went to college and, got away from all of it for a long time. And then I kind of started getting back into, when I started off as a CD collector when I was younger, and then moved away from that and started collecting a lot of Dark Descent stuff, actually, for a long time there. And then I just kind of wanted to be more involved. I didn't have time to, with the family and the job that I had at that time, I didn't have a ton of time to like go to shows and do all the things that I wanted to do. So I was like, well, what could I do that would be a good creative outlet for me? And I was like, well, I'm just going to do a hobby label. The first year was just a couple of vinyl releases of some super underground stuff. And I soon quickly realized that is a very expensive endeavor and risky. So that kind of went to the wayside after my first 3. And then I started hand making tapes. I was duplicating all my own stuff. I would do like 1 to 2 drops a month, like runs like 30. And I just totally fell in love with all of that. And then after doing it for 1 year, and it was only supposed to be a hobby. It was never supposed to be anything more than that. I got laid off from my big boy job. And I was like, well, this job market sucks. Can I do this full time? Luckily enough, my wife supports me a ton doing this. Bless her. And I've been able to do this and take the opportunity, because I was, my last job was an operations management role. Like Ryan, I have a business background as well. I just was tired of running businesses for everyone else, and I was like, I'm just going to run a business that I want to run in the way that I want to do it and what I love and do every single day anyway. So kind of is a natural progression with that. Now 2 years later of doing it full time, got this warehouse space. Very lucky on the warehouse space. We just moved to my wife's hometown, a very small town in Kansas, and her uncle owns this old elementary school and put all these business suites inside of it. And I was like, dude, I gotta get one of those spots, because I was running it out of my basement for 2 years, quickly running out of room. So this, I should be able to call this spot home for quite some time, I'm hoping.
Very good. I wish you luck. So for each of you, how important is purity of vision? Like New Standard Elite, known for brutal death metal. Are you willing to stray from that at all, or is it very crucial to? So Ryan, can you never put out like a brutal thrash? The rest of you, can you ever put out like a power metal? Or Matt, you've even touched on brutal death a little bit with that more recent Vile Apparition, I think. But how important is that to stay to kind of what you're known for, or a specific type of death metal?
I don't really have any plans. I never did. I mean, we have Crypt Sermon. That's different than Thanafaxath. That's different than Vile Apparition. It's not connected by a style of music or one sound from one genre. I never really wanted that, but I do feel like it's connected in other ways. So I kind of look at that. I mean, I kind of know when a band's right. For what I want to do now, it's pretty easy. A lot of times it's really easy, to tell you the truth. So it's for me, it's not, I'm not constrained by I know, like Ryan, they're keeping it in the brutal death metal vein, but that's what they've always done, and I haven't done that. I've had a lot of releases that maybe considered dark death metal or doomy death metal or something like that, but it's never all been categorized by that. We've done black metal, we've done doom metal, we've done death metal. So for me, it's not necessarily important about the style of music or the genre of metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say mine's a pretty similar answer regarding that. It's just stuff that I like. It's a personal taste. Everything I'm releasing is highly curated from that front. Everything you hear is just music that I like, so I'm fairly eclectic as a label. I just put out a death thrash record today. I put out Infinite Misery, which sounds like Cannibal Corpse. A lot of it's hardcore related. I grew up a hardcore kid, so that's just kind of ingrained in me. So that whole infusion is something that I like the taste of as well.
We're, as I mentioned, primarily, 95% all brutal death. We have some bands that kind of cross into, a different genre. Grindcore in particular, like Sewage is a band we just signed that's got, some cock and ball torture, Last Days of Humanity, lymphatic phlegm kind of feel to it. Trichomoniasis, which is maybe in a genre by itself. It's, if anybody's heard that, it's just nuts. Dithemia, but for the most part, it is just in that space. I personally listen to different styles of music. I grew up in the hardcore thrash scene, but as far as this label, it's just brutal death. So that's just kind of our niche spot.
There you go.
Yeah, and I mean, if you put out anything otherwise, then you just get all those sellout accusations and stuff too.
Oh, well,
right?
even if we get a little bit of feedback from the NSC purists anytime something strays its hat outside of the box, I hear about it. Yeah.
So, in terms of deciding bands to bring in to sign or try to put out their releases, what do you look for? What do your rejection rates look like? Are you getting just tons of one-man slam bands from Indonesia trying to get on your label? Can you give some insights there?
I guess that one, you're talking about the slam bands. I guess you were talking about Ryan there. Maybe you probably get a lot more than me, but I get probably 5 or 6, maybe 10 submissions a day. It's a lot. I get a lot of emails. And the signing rate's really low. You know what I'm saying? Like I get a lot. I get stuff in the PO box. I get stuff in the email. I get stuff in the Instagram, even though you tell them not to. But I mean, it's a lot. There's no way. The worst part of my job, and I've always said this, is I say one of the worst until I can figure out another one, but it is telling people no. Or just not having the time to get back to every single one of them. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of them might be easy to dismiss. You know, I can look at some of the descriptions and I can tell, you know, there's some words that I don't really do well with, like post. There's a couple other things too. And, you know, I know we talk about this. We talk about, and you have people talking about things like gatekeeping, but I mean, we're gatekeepers, every one of us. We all decide what gets put on our label or what other people. That doesn't mean that, you know, like these guys can't go get signed on or released by someone else, but you know, you look back in decades ago in the 90s and you talk about all this sick music that never got released properly by a label, or somebody didn't pick this up and it never got signed, and how sick it was and what were people doing back then. But it's the same thing. There's just only so many people and there's so many records. So you know what I'm saying? So there's going to be some really good stuff that just doesn't get signed. I can see lots of bands. I see a lot of bands that make a name for themselves. And then I say, wow, okay, I remember when they contacted me. You know what I'm saying? Like I can look in my email address and pick out dozens and dozens of them. But it's like I said, I can't do everything, you know? So it's just the way it is. It's just I take on what I can at this point. And I'm constricted by time. I'm constricted by other resources. And that's how I kind of look at things now. It's like, what can I take on? And if it happens to come along when I can take something on like that, then you know, it works out. But a lot of times I have to pass up on some good opportunities just because, you know, it's I'm one guy. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I do have, you know, my right-hand man and everything, but like I said, that part, it's all me. So, yeah, it's a pretty low success rate for sure. But again, there's other labels too, and yeah, it stinks, but you know, I get so many people talking about how they've listened to Dark Descent Records stuff for years, and they're such big fans, and they believe their music would fit, and a lot of times I agree with them, but you know, that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, how about the rest of you?
I wouldn't say I get that many. I mean, he gets a lot of more submissions than I do. I definitely get a handful a week. The quality is usually not up to par for me personally. Sometimes, every once in a while, I'll be blown away by a submission. Like just a couple weeks ago, a Chicago band submitted to me their new album, and I remember them being a metalcore band, but this new album is straight up mellow death, and it would absolutely blew me away. And I was like, man, this is the first time that's happened to me in a very, very long time. It was just like an instant yes. I listened to the album like 16 times in one day. You know what I mean? Like that connection is very rare, I feel like, from a submission. Most of the time it's, oh, I like this band, or this single's badass. Let me get a hold of these guys maybe before they drop the entire album, or see what they do next. I'm very interested in this specifically. I don't like Matt mentioned, I'm tired of the Instagram DMs. Like that stuff just gets buried. You're never going to get anywhere with that. Like all I want is a streamable link and a look at the artwork. That's really all I need via email. And if I can get back to you, I will. I used to, you know, when the submission rate wasn't as high, I would try to say something to everyone that submitted, just to try to be nice. But eventually it was just too many and I couldn't do it anymore. And now I just have to ignore half of them, which makes me feel terrible because I, you know, like he said, I hate saying no.
It happens, man. I mean, it happens. We're all, like I said, that's why I started the label. He kept getting, I mean, that's the way it goes. If I spent all my day answering every one of those and listening earnestly to everyone, it would take a lot of my time. You know what I'm saying? I don't have an A&R guy. In fact, I just had a girl contact me about an internship and maybe some she can do remotely, but I just don't have the time. I just don't have all the time.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat as what Matt had said. I mean, with the volume of submissions we get is hard to keep up. You know, I'm lucky enough to have, you know, we have a small group of 5 people, but as far as, you know, submissions, it's up to me. I'm not a musician myself. Anyone that takes the time and effort to create music, as Matt already said, you feel bad because you want to sign more bands than you actually can. I mean, we have 111 active bands. We've been on a signing barrage the last 18 months. And I have friends that are in bands that I like, I enjoy, and why can't we get on the label? Sometimes it's maybe not quite Brutal Death, or it just doesn't fit. But I guess the bottom line, as far as people asking, how do we get on your label? Well, if I don't like it, I won't sign it. Because it's hard for me to get behind and passion and push and work for a band if I just don't enjoy the music. So, but the Matt mentioned, Indonesia. It is insane the number of Far East submissions we get from slam bands. We don't have many slam bands on the label. Epicardiectomy obviously is the most notable in that genre, but I don't know what is going on in that part of the world, but it is unbelievable how many slam band submissions we've been getting the last 6 months in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So each of you, a couple of you mentioned how many other people you've got. So Matt, you've got a second in command, so to speak.
Yeah, it's I had off and on through the years, we've had a number. I think at any one time, the most I've had was 3 outside of me, but now it's just me and Eric for the past year. Lee moved on, found a job that will pay him a little bit better, which is fine. But he worked for me for a good number of years. But Eric's been with me for over 10 years, so he handles he handles the order part and all that. I handle everything else mostly. He's kind of like, I want to say he's handles the warehouse stuff, handles our stock inventory and all that other stuff. So Eric's invaluable to me. I couldn't do it. Like I said, honestly, there's been times when I was like, man, I just wonder when the time comes when it all winds down. And, because I'm not like, I started when I was 38. So I've been almost 17 years now, so you can figure out how old I am now. But you know what I'm saying? Like, am I 65 years old and still putting out sick records? I feel like at some point, all of that stuff has to get passed on to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't, as an old guy, always being the voice of something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how long, but I also find myself keep wanting to continue to for Eric. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't have to find some 9-to-5 bullshit too. So, we kind of like work off each other and everything, and we get through a lot. Sometimes it can be a little painstaking, but it's just me and Eric right now. And if there's a real big busy period, I'll bring somebody else in to help out. We've done that in the past. I've had guest people hanging out for a couple weeks, like when New Blood Incantation record came out, or Spectral Voice or something like that, a couple months. So just me and Eric. It's like Ryan said, I don't think any one of us would be here if it wasn't a passion, meaning that you're not signing what you like. I sign what I like. I can't get behind it if I do. That's all for all of us. The only people that's not for are the bullshit major labels. So they look at things like sales and units moved and shit, and who's gonna dig this, because they're stacked with people that do all these different jobs from all the other places and different types of genres. So you might get some kind of BS stuff next to some really sick stuff. So whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not what we do. So. Yeah. I could never get behind something that I just don't enjoy at all. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you want that stuff, you know where to go. You know what I mean?
Ryan, did you say your team's you and is it 5 other people?
Yeah, Dan is still involved. It's kind of been neat to see that he's, through his burnout, staying away from the money and the everyday running of the business. He does a lot of the creative control stuff behind the scenes with CD layouts, web stuff, a lot of the logos for NSC bands he does. So, and he's getting back into music again, which is kind of cool. So, I think, you'll see him around a lot more than less, especially in that space. Pollock from Ecchymosis does our YouTube page. a lot of the layouts for LPs, graphics online. I mean, the guy is great with anything, concerning web development. My brother, who used to run a DTG printing company in Japan, moved back here, so he does all of our printing. And then I've got someone that does mailing, warehouse stuff. So, and then myself.
And Ben, is it just you, or do you have others helping you out?
Just me, man. Every day, all day. I have, yeah,
wow.
Isn't that crazy? I have one guy that I keep on retainer to handle all my promo, meaning like my press kits specifically. So he handles all the reviews, previews, all the communication between outlets, because that's one thing. As I've been doing this, I'd never really had experience with, and I wasn't able to find the time to do that. But it's also something that I want to be able to gift my bands and not just be like, hey, here's a new CD that no one knows about, because I can't push it right outside of my own socials. So it was nice his name's Oliver. He actually hit me up looking for like free work, like an internship, Matt's like kind of having you mentioned, and he blew it out of the water with my first release last summer and got me a Disciple premiere. And I was like, dude, let me just pay you per month and you can handle all of my press for all of my releases. And him and I became really close, and he's absolutely fantastic. But everything else you see, all the content, YouTube, anything warehouse related, layouts, design, video content is all me. I don't have any plans to hire right now. I would like to be as frugal as possible. It's but I do it full time, so I have 8 hours a day that I can put into it, which helps. But it's still, I think how everyone feels. You always kind of feel like you're underwater most of the time. But it's a passion thing. So you're always swimming through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's just you, Ben, you're working more than 8 hours a day for sure.
Yeah. Well,
some days.
Meet. And like Ryan talked about, the biggest thing is making, sometimes those payments meet and making sure everybody gets paid on time and stuff, because money kind of comes and it goes. You know what I'm saying? So like there's always this yin and yang moving. So when one goes out faster than one comes in, then it becomes a little bit more difficult. But yeah, there's always irons in the fire. So and Ben, I've got PR people. I wasn't counting those obviously as my direct help. I've got PR people that do the layouts, because I'm fucking stupid with that stuff. Website shit, I can't do any of that stuff either. So I rely on people. I do. But again, there's more than, if we're counting all those, and there's more than just me and Eric. But the physical part, I'm handling all the inputs and all the socials and stuff like that. But yeah.
It's a lot of work.
No doubt. Do any of you still have like a day job, or is this it? Like, how many hours are you putting into this? So we just got Ben's insight on there, but
I retired in 2012 from the service. So for me, it was pretty simple. I had job offers to go teach and some other things, and I wasn't interested anymore. So I just punched out and became a recluse from that scene. And like I said, there was 2 years that I started the label when I retired, and my whole thing was, well, what do I do? I mean, do I put my full-time effort into the label, or do I get one of these jobs and do it half-ass again? So I just stopped. I stopped looking for another job and just did this full-time. I talked to a couple people that were doing things like this full-time. I spoke to like Chris Bruni from Profound Lower on the phone, asked him some stuff, and made my decision. So I've been doing this full-time. I'll wake up every day during the week at 6:20. I have to get my son ready for school. I let my wife sleep in. So I'll get him ready. He's 13. I've got a 33-year-old daughter. And after that, we just go to work. We kind of like have a little meeting for 15 minutes and work about 8 o'clock, and until we have a good stopping point. I wouldn't say 8 hours, because I sometimes it could be that, sometimes it's not. I gathered things from the years where I don't want to just sit around and do busy work, and we'll have stuff all the time. But again, that stuff's there all the time. So I'm not doing things, just out of like, well, we're working 8 hours a day. So, if it's there, it's there. But at the same time, at the end of every day, there's always something to do. And that's how it'll always be. So yeah, like Ben, full time, no other job, never had a job, don't want another job. And if I do, then, stop doing this, then, I'll figure it out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
the pay decrease that I went from my salary job to what I do now is just like, how do you live on that? But it's like I said, my wife is very generous. I only pay myself what, at least right now, while I'm kind of like in a building phase, right? What I need at the end of the month to cover specific things. The rest of it gets straight up funneled right back into distro releases, everything else.
I'm a retired vet too, so I have my pension. I have money from the VA from disability issues. That helps. It would be really difficult. My wife has her own business and it does well, but like, I'm not gonna lie. I did 22 years. I served my time. Now it's my time. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm using that to help fund this, more or less.
Well, and I think too, everyone always says when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, right? But like a lot of people
Yeah.
don't get to actually experience that most of the time. So like the money doesn't really mean a whole lot when like at least for me, when I get to love what I do all day long and then work in my one main hobby that I've loved for the past 20 something years,
Yeah, I have to agree with Ben. I have two other companies that I'm still involved with that, as I tell, anybody on the label that pays actual real money, and anything that, the label makes, we just keep putting it back in, to churn more releases, buy more merch. I probably maybe 6 to 8 hours every day. It doesn't seem like work. I think if it does seem like work, I'll quit. It's fun. I enjoy it. I've been a part of this scene forever. And, even if it's longer days, it just doesn't seem like you're clocking in and clocking out. Nobody's looking over your shoulder. So, I think it's more of a passion and a hobby than viewing it as like an actual job.
Yeah, and it's not all roses every single day. There's plenty of hurdles you go through that are headaches.
Yeah. Because both of you guys have kind of been doing it for a couple years, and it is really great at start. I'm not saying not to say that it doesn't continue being great, but there comes a point when there's becomes a lot of headaches, and it kind of, you have to kind of sit back and ask yourself why you're doing it. You know what I'm saying? Because like now it's 17 years almost for me. There's a lot of headaches. Eric said, we should just have some kind of camera on or whatever and let people watch. I was like, no, man, they would just watch me cussing at my computer all day. You know what I'm saying? Like some program's not working, some manufacturing delay bullshit, or somebody trying to bill you for some customs crap. So, the music aspect is great. I love it. I hate, deadlines. I hate a lot of the other stuff that goes along with it. I hate, some of the external things that you can't control. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a give and take there. I love the music part of it, and I'll always love the music part of it. But it's like everything else. It is, because that's what we're based off of, business. We're buying and selling things. So sometimes that can suck. You know what I'm saying? You're mixing those two things together: a passion, something you really love, and business, something which can really suck at times. So, there's a bit of that involved sometime. You find yourself taking care of business, and you have your ups and downs, and you have your periods where you just don't want to answer anybody. You kind of go through those whole roller coaster of emotions doing things like this over time.
Yeah, 17 years. I don't know about that, Matt. You probably have way more story. I'm not going to last that long. Wow.
I got a lot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna die in here, guys. I don't know about you. My wife's gonna find my corpse on the floor when I'm 70 years old.
Yep. Yeah. Well. Yeah. I
hope at least.
Yeah. That's another 16 years for me. So like, if I just double the time that I've done already, then I'll be there. I'll be dead here. So yeah. But yeah, I think we're all in the same boat as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. So let's talk format for a second. So CDs, vinyl, tapes, digital. What's the priority? What are the obstacles with each? How do you feel about? Is it important to get it out in every format? What do you think?
Matt, you want to talk about cassette tapes? I know you've been struggling with that lately as much as me.
I'm going to talk about this because, things have changed. Things have changed since 2009. When we started, you had CDs. You know what I'm saying? You got vinyls. There were some labels that did vinyls, obviously NWN, but you had CDs. If the CD did well, it got a vinyl release. There was, vinyl record labels coming up and things, but not everything got a vinyl release. Not everything got a tape release. It wasn't like the 80s where you got all three formats, or 90s rather, more or less, or early 90s, but you didn't get all three formats. So to plan a vinyl release back in 2010, 2011, you had to push a little bit unless it was a really big band. A run of 500 records and you ran out of them, that was a lot. And somewhere along the line in the next 5 years after that, then it kind of went different. And, I can't remember the last time I pressed 500 records. But I kind of look at everything as if it's an album. It gets a CD and LP. If it's an EP, even it gets a CD and an LP at least. I've gotten used to doing tapes, and we've done tapes since the beginning, but they were usually demo tapes. But somewhere along the line, we started doing all three formats again too. But as Ben knows, and I don't know if you do any tapes, Ryan, but the prices of tapes are just really stupid.
More than CDs now.
Yeah,
Well,
Matt, talking about the number of emails that we would get from Indonesian slam bands maybe is only beaten by the number of emails I get from people that have cassette pressing companies around the world that want, to basically, take your art and music and press, 100 tapes. So, finally, after talking to some bands on the label that, felt there was a niche collecting market for cassettes, we found a company that, decent price, obviously it's based on volume and order volume, but we're doing our own. Primarily NSC has just been CD medium. We've been getting into LPs lately, especially with, I think, the collector side of LPs has exploded, especially in this genre the last couple of years. Like when we started with Nithing, we did 100 hand number copies that sold out in 8 minutes. And now in the secondary market, people are, $150 for these. So, I think there are some releases that fans really, really want. We bumped up. I think most of ours are 200 pressings now. They don't all sell out. It's a slow bleed. They do move, and over time you sell them. But we're primarily CDs. We're getting into tapes, and we'll continue to drop LPs, but not for every release. We basically decide, based on our rationale. People ask, well, how do you decide what band get an LP release? It's just based on what the CD does. So if we have a band that sells out CDs, there's 100% chance you're going to see the LP follow.
But that's like, I remember a couple of years back talking to Eric about this, that it just wasn't a lot of brutal death metal vinyl. It was a lot of CDs and like you said, and it wasn't until just a couple of years ago I did start noticing you guys doing LPs and things like that. So that's really good. But like you said, I've also, and we talk about it being a niche format, is that there's a couple things at play. You have the people that like the format because it's cute and, whatever. They collect the tapes. But there's also a lot of people that they bought into tape collecting, and they bought into tape buying because tapes were the cheapest format. If you were on a budget or you were on space constraints, all the people in Indonesia, all the people in Asia, there's a lot of people that rely on those tape pressings because that's what they collect. They may not have the space to have walls of records, at their home, so they buy the tapes. So, I also understand, and that's kind of why, Ben, it was never about just dismissing the tape format, but it was about dismissing the price on the tape format. I just, I started in tapes with like $2. Now they're $4 or $5. You know what I'm saying? So at some point, you either have to adjust and you have to say, well, tape's got to be $15 because not only do you have the manufacturing cost, but you got to give the band that money, and then whatever else you have in production, you have to factor that in as well. So the fact that we're still regularly pricing tapes below CDs, you know what I'm saying, is crazy, because they do
It
cost
really is.
twice as they cost twice as much as CDs to manufacture. That is
Right.
Like I said, the CDs get the brunt of the production cost and all that, because you're going to move a good number of CDs. But even in vinyl, like Ryan, I don't know how many vinyl you guys do now. I guess it's probably like 500 per release when you do them. But
Yeah, we're
biggest
actually not 200. We don't.
200?
If we, we might. Yeah, obviously, Gorgasm, Ecchymosis, bands like that. We'll probably see a higher run. But
Okay.
Just to go back on what you said on cassettes, I mean, you're exactly correct in that. I think the sticker shock for some people, saying, "Why are you selling a cassette more than a CD?" Well, especially, for our market, it's going to be extremely difficult to sell more than 100 cassettes, except for the big time release. So you're not getting that price to where you're buying 500 to 1,000 CDs. You could justify selling them for 10, 11, 12 bucks. But, you're right. That's why you see a lot of cassettes now, they're in that 13 to 15 range.
So that's still a small market for you for the vinyl. I didn't realize it was so small. So it was still before, when you weren't doing that many vinyl, Brutal Death. I just figured it was something that more people got into more recently, but it still sounds like there's a small number. You just print smaller numbers for that dedicated crowd. See, like this, the largest number of vinyl we've done in a pressing is 7,000. And that wasn't even blood incantation. So, like I said, I 500 records is like the minimum most of the time. I'm going to get into a couple demo releases that have 300 records, but I mean, I thought you guys maybe had done at least.
How long have you been pressing records, though?
First one was in our 2010.
Okay.
So I've seen that just kind of explode. I mean, it happened along the vinyl. The vinyl reignition happened, along the same time as our ascent, though. So, you know what I'm saying? I don't know necessarily how much that has to do with, but I mean, that's what we do. And that not everything's 7,000. We've done 1,000, 2,000. There's been other ones with, most of them, probably fall in the 700 range for new releases now.
Well,
I would say.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
In regards to vinyl too, Ryan, I'm just starting to get back into it late last year. I'm doing runs of 200 most of the time, also 200 to 300. But the majority of the bands that I'm working with are very young and don't have an install base large enough to sell 500 to 1,000 records.
Right.
But it is what it is. And honestly, I think to go back real quick to the price of cassette tapes, like what we're selling it as, I'm a tape collector myself, and I don't want to let go of tapes because they're cool to me. I like retro stuff, VHS, things like that. And I almost want to keep the price where it's at. And even though I take a hit on the margin just to try and keep them alive, but I don't know how much longer that's really going to take, because they should be $12, $13, where CDs should be $11 to $10. It needs to be completely reversed, to be honest with you, for them to stay alive whatsoever.
And me pontificating on Facebook like I do, where I talk about things like, and just throw out stuff like tape pricing, is a lot of me just thinking about stuff, and posting it. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm cutting all tapes, but I might make adjustments. I might say, hey, look, this is an EP. We don't need 7 panels, on the artwork. Let's take a break. Let's like kind of make something a little bit more condensed. There's things that you can do at the same time. You have to reconsider it too, like what kind of release it is too. So I've sold a good number of tapes. I'm not going to lie. We sold everything. It gets at least 200 now, but there's been releases where we've done 1,000 tapes, obviously some of the bigger stuff, 500 tapes, the Malignant Altar one, we did 500, they sold out, and we did 500 more. I still have some of the second pressing for that tape, but you know what I mean? That's a lot of tapes.
Yeah, when I was talking to Sean from Desert Wastelands a couple months ago, and he was talking about the Flesh Rot demo that he did on tape, and just within the pre-order phase itself, this is when like tapes were booming, right, in the early 2020s. He said he went through like 3 or 4 different pressings just during the pre-order because he just kept selling them and selling them, selling them. I've never seen that since I started this, but I'm also very young in this game, so
Yeah, it died down a few years ago. The tapes, yeah.
I think
I've seen that.
Ben had mentioned, you know, we oh, sorry. We have, you know, just to say what, you know, Ben had mentioned a minute ago, you know, we have a ton of young bands, teenage bands. You know, there's been an explosion with youth brutal death metal bands the last few years. And, you know, what's kind of neat is seeing that crowd is getting into physical collecting instead of just everything being digital media. And, you know, we've seen a big uptick in, you know, all media sales. You know, that's why, you know, we decided to expand into cassettes and start pushing and continue to move the number of LPs. But, you know, just based on sound, you know, I try to tell the younger fans that if you want the actual recording from the band, buy the CD. Buy the LP, you know, because these online streaming companies are compressing the files so badly now. If you want the actual recording, buy the physical media. So, you know, it's kind of nice to see that that's been picking up again.
It's also this, Ryan, is that you don't own any of those recordings. You don't own it. It's like it's like going
it could go
on and
away at any
buying
time,
a PlayStation 5 and buying a video game online.
Yeah,
you don't own
movies
it. They can
too.
zap that away from you at any damn time.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So like the only way to protect you and your collection from the next wave of bullshit that they've got going on is to have records, to have CDs, even have tapes if that's what it is. But like, you know, your Spotify collection could be gone the next day. So this idea that, you know, well, you know, I just decluttered and that's all good. But one day, don't be surprised if you don't have any files, or, you know what I'm saying? Or they're moving away with this kind of, you know, there'll be converters and all that, I'm sure. But, you know, they're not tangible. They're not something that you can grab. You know what I'm saying? That can be taken away just like the video games or the movies that you buy. You don't own them.
Well, I think lucky for us too, being in metal, it's one of it probably the largest genre of music that has held on to the love of physical music and the collector's mentality regarding that. A lot of genres of music don't have that anymore.
At the same time, Ben, you know, like you'll see shows, you know, and there's 1,000 people deep, and then you're like, man, just think if all those people bought a CD. You know what I'm saying? Like every one of those shows, and they don't though. So like the numbers,
they don't.
And that's why like you know,
like 10 CDs.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and 400 shirts. Like they'll buy the merch over the CD,
and it's great. Right. It's great because the band's selling tickets, but you know, it's still a fraction of the amount of people that go to shows by any kind of physical format. So, you know, it's good they'll pay for a ticket maybe to go see a show and buy the band's t-shirt and stuff, but we are focusing on that small demographic that still buys physical product. And we will tell ourselves that, you know, metal supports better than a lot of genres because it does. I'm not going to lie, but that support still comes from a smaller base than it really should.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I agree.
So,
yeah, Matt,
number
Matt,
of you mentioned
some of the. Oh, sorry, Kyle. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're good.
I was just going to mention one thing that Matt had said. You know, as far as, you know, things going away, you know, online. You know, we have some fairly intense, you know, artwork with, you know, our covers that have to be censored on Bandcamp and on YouTube, and you know, you never know at any given time. You know, if through censors, you know, whether it be lyrics or, you know, the artwork, it's just gone. So if you don't have the CD, you know, the LP cassette, you know, it might, you know, you might never find it online ever again. So, yeah.
So mentioning shirts, a couple of you mentioned those. Like, how important is merch? Is it important to be putting merch out there? How are you doing with that stuff? That stuff's expensive too, of course. But
I do less merch than I did, you know, 10 years ago. I was just talking with Jesus from Messick. It's the same boat. You know, you have to print so many of a shirt, especially now. Prices have went up, and there are less sales directly. Like shirts that I would have done 10 years ago, I could have 40, 50 pre-orders and almost sold out and maybe made some more. Now I just, like that Sick Degraded long sleeve, I think we sold 10 or 12, which, you know, It's not a ton, but I'm just looking to get the money back because the band wanted to do some shirts. So we'll send some over to Jesus and we'll send some to the band and everything. But it doesn't sell as much now. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about a time when things records are almost like twice as much as they were when I started. When we sold $15 records. So I think people are having less expendable income overall as a percentage, so they have to be a little bit more choosy. Do I want the record or the shirt right now? I can only get one. It's that type of thing. When prices have exploded the way they have, and unfortunately, you go into record stores and some of the bigger labels, they're pushing $40 on a retail record. That's the first thing that I always ask my distributor: what's the retail on that? Because I don't want to. Our job is to sell records. There was a Russian guy. I'm not going to even name him, but he was so cheap with everything. He would get his CDs in bulk, and he would charge retail $15, and this was 10 years ago, and we were charging $10. But you're really constricting yourself because maybe you sell some of those CDs, but I sell twice as much, and they're $10. You know what I'm saying? Like they could buy almost 2 CDs for the price of your one. So what is your job as a record label owner? It's to get the music in other people's hands. I do want to survive. I want to make money because I want to continue and I want to do the next thing. But at the same time, I want to keep the prices as low as I can for everybody. So I've always been reluctant to raise the price. You can talk to Eric, talk to whoever. I saw somebody on a forum talking about that and talking about prices and of one of our releases, and then everybody came out and said, "Hey, I think you're barking up the wrong tree here because this is Dark Descent. They keep their prices about as reasonable as you're going to get nowadays, and that's the truth." I'm not looking for a reason to raise prices. We still have all of our back title from when things before they escalated in price at the same rate as wholesale rates, the same rate in the shops. I know some label owners that immediately when COVID hit and prices started to get up, they changed the pricing for all of their titles, even the stuff that was on their wholesale list last week. So there's a lot of like jobbing going on with some people, but at the same time, it's about just like, what do you want to get?
We all know these major labels too. You mentioned $40 vinyl. We all know they're price gouging the shit out of everyone. I mean, the print quantities that those labels are doing, they're even for wholesale for like a $10 CD for a wholesale. That blows my mind. I'm like, dude, your margin you're getting on wholesale is as much, if not more, than what I'm getting at retail. It's absurd. It's absurd.
I will say that, a lot of them have some big budgets. I can, I know the Blood Incantation budget really exploded, going to a bigger label. So there's more, but also they have numbers. So like they're moving a lot bigger numbers too. So I don't think that everything's the same boat with them. At the same time, I do know that, a $40 record's, but the people pay it, they're selling those records. They wouldn't be doing that if they didn't pay it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's just, the volume of it. I would love to buy, 3,000 records, and you can get the price down and sell them in the 20s instead of the 30s, high 30s, 40s. That's the biggest issue, I think, with, just the volume of what we can buy and what can sell. We move quite a bit of merch because we just do print on demand now with direct to garment machines. It's been nice because as a fan, I used to hate pre-orders. It used to drive me insane. I would order so many things pre-order, I would forget what I got, and some things would come, some things wouldn't. So, now, with the exception of our shorts and hats, which Seven Sins does for us, everything else is, we just print it and sell it. Even with CDs, I don't pre-order those anymore. Just when they come in, we put them up.
I like the direct to garment stuff though. again, that's my own stubbornness. I want screen prints. I just want a screen print still. So I've been pushed towards the DTG stuff in the past, and prices have exploded on screen prints, but I want the screen prints. So like, it's just the,
Yeah.
you know, the idea, the DTG worked for me, then I get DTG, but I just don't want a DTG.
I will
sure.
say screen print is by far higher quality, right? But DTG actually looks really good these days, comparatively speaking. And because a lot of my stuff's print on demand too, because I was sick of being, sitting with dead stock, and I'd rather a band have a T-shirt available for the 5 to 10 people that are going to buy it, and it be DTG, than not be available at all because I can't print 50 screen print shirts because no one's going to buy them. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. It's like I have to go this route. I don't have another option, at least at the moment, depending on the band.
I'm stubborn. You're exactly right. I mean, I have a whole room of merch and stuff, and they move, and eventually they'll all sell out. But you're exactly right. I sit with it. It's available, and then I'll have somebody come along and say, wow, are you ever going to repress this shirt again? And I was like, dude, you want a small shirt of something that I just finally sold out after 5 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't come at me like you can't find one anywhere. It was around before you listened to the band, So.
Yeah, our rationale with screen print to direct the garment, obviously, when I started off, everything was screen print. I still have, as far as longevity goes, screen print is the way to go. I mean, I still have shirts from, I have a Slayer Hell Awaits shirt, that is, you can still wear and still see it. But, for many of our covers are like art pieces, and to be able to get that range of color and the vibrancy of it, it's got to be direct to garment. There's just not enough color range in screen printing, maybe 8 to 10 with some of these new, advanced screen printing machines where DTG, it's unlimited color.
Also, the cost of each of those screens, the shirt would be way too expensive to sell.
That's the thing, though. See, now I don't know what pricing is necessarily on DTG. We did do a run of because I just didn't get any sales, and we ended up doing them DTG. But he was telling me that initially the price was higher than screen. So I was like, well, what's the point of the DTG? Then I just only can order 10 from you and get this higher price. But there's nothing. There's no bonus Matt, for me. There's nothing.
With one or two colors, though, right?
The advantage of DTG, other than just the quality, the visual quality of DTG versus screen printing, is volume based. I mean, if you're going to order 500, 600, 700 shirts that you can move or through a pre-sale, sure, screen printing is probably the way to go. But when you're dealing with, a band that's going to sell 25, 30 shirts, you will go bankrupt, trying to, because your cost on screen printing is going to be you can't pay $17, $18 for a screen printed shirt and then try to sell it for 27, 28. So it's you definitely want with lower volume to go DTG.
Yeah. I that's been one thing that's frustrated me over the years, is that I had told this story, for instance, we did a Crip Sermon t-shirt when Ruins of Fading Light came out, and we sold quite a bit of them. I had them printed a couple times, and it's a popular band, so we sold a bit. And they were $7.50 for a full color front print t-shirt. The next album came out, last year, and I went and had a full color front. I knew the prices had went up, so I was aware going in that I'd been pushed up throughout the last 3 or 4 years after that, and they were $18.75 from $7.50 each to $18.75. Wow. So, and then everything he started raising his minimums on me from 100 to 140 to get a special price. Told me once, no, that he couldn't give me the special price anymore at 100, and started complaining about how he has to pay $16 an hour for somebody to fold the shirts. But the thing is that I don't have my shirts folded. He's conflating things, that those are, the t-shirt distribution where you have bands and you run their shops, and you're taking designs and selling this band shop shirts out of your t-shirt business. So you're cutting into this business that we have, and then you're also complaining because you have to raise the price because you have to pay somebody $16 an hour to fold shirts, which I don't require or I don't use. That's strictly your retail business. So I had to kind of do some readjustments on all that, and work with someone that was more of our style, which is more of an underground passion, working for themselves like everybody here, rather than, having somebody that has a bunch of people and then you're off and you never check the final print to see what it looks like anymore. You don't, you kind of lose touch with that. You kind of lose touch with who made you as big as you are and those types of things. So I am stubborn with that, and I do understand the DTG and the benefits and all that, but I kind of just figured that I've been doing it this way and I was just going to die this way. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of I've had a little bit of frustration with that process with the t-shirts. I voiced it a couple times. I've told that story about the rising cost of the t-shirt, but that's kind of where I was at. And now we've been using Pyre Press for our t-shirts, and he does great work, and the prices are a lot better now. So luckily I can kind of continue. I don't do shirts with everything, but shirts more are a luxury item nowadays,
So, if anybody's watching and isn't familiar with some of this jargon, can any of you just give us a brief description of what is that process for direct-to-garment versus screen print shirts?
Well, Ryan, sounds like you do your own DTG, so you'd probably be the best person to answer that.
Yeah, the good and the bad is we have finally found a company. We had some issues with the older machines we were using, so we bought 3 brand new ones now. They can get temperamental after 5-6 years, so these are all brand new, working fine. I think the biggest issue, along the line of what Matt was saying with price, is the ink costs for these things it's astronomical. That's where the biggest cost comes, where you look at, if we're doing a full color, front back, hoodie with dual sleeves, you're looking at $15 to $18, of ink cost. So, that's the good and the bad, where you're getting that great print, that a lot of our fans, are accustomed to and want, but it's not cheap. And then our only option, as we talked about before, is if we could get the volume, sure, we could drop the price by buying many, copies of a screen print. But, with the exception of a few bands, we're just not moving, hundreds and hundreds of copies of a release.
But Kyle, to answer your question too, on top of that, so you were asking the difference between DTG versus screen print?
Yeah, if anybody's watching it isn't familiar, so yeah, screen print, right? That's single colors added one at a time, individual cost for each, right? Anyone want to give a better definition of that? Since
DTG just is machine printed,
right?
That's pretty much the biggest difference.
Yeah, you just feed the shirts in, they print them. Whereas the screen print will come up with a little rocker, with up to 8 different shirts on there, and then you have to just do the screens one at a time. So you just screen each one with the color of the screen and layer them like Ben said. But the DTG stuff's just fed in, the files are fed in, and it's just printed right there.
The thing people have to be careful of, and we put little notes in for every shirt that we do sell. You have to be a little more careful with, a screen print. You could, like all my screen printed shirts, I turn them inside out, you throw them in the wash, that's it. You have to be careful with, if you want to make sure that those prints last, no fabric softener. You never want to put it in a dryer. I think when you start doing that, you're gonna see that image deteriorate a lot quicker than you would like.
Yeah, but I have hundreds of shirts, so I don't care. I just grab another one from the back room.
Yeah, if you only wear it once every 3 months, do whatever you want to it, man. Throw it in the dirt and then put it back on. It doesn't matter.
Like, shit, man, I got so many. Let me go back and get a new shirt.
So these albums we put out and the shirts and stuff, already mentioned some of that might get pulled off online if it's got grotesque artwork or something. So where's your all of your lines at? Is there any kind of artwork you've received where you've been like, no, I'm not willing to put that out, or any lyrical content? Like, is there any boundaries, any restrictions with your labels in terms of, no, I will not put out this, you need to make some changes?
I haven't had anybody as far as the artwork. I mean, like the Adorio album had, cocks and vaginas on it, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't. I don't really mess with the that artistic part, if that's what their vision, if it, because usually that comes with the whole release. If I don't like that, that's part of me not liking some of the release. I've had releases and people show me stuff where I was like, man, that art is brutal, and it goes into my factor whether I want to release it or not. So I don't believe in injecting into that. I won't inject into a lot of those things because I'm not the artistic guy. I'm just the guy that has racks full of records and a computer over here.
With the styles that I release most of the time, I don't have to worry about anything that's like overly graphic. I don't personally love overly sexualized artwork or anything really with that. I don't like things that have to do with kids. As a father of two, it's just not really my thing.
I mean, yeah.
Abuse of women, things of that nature too. It just comes off. It's just a little bit cringe sometimes to me. I've only had to say no to artwork one time, and that was actually this past summer because I wouldn't say it was an explicit rape scene on the cover because he was not really a man, more like a demon. But I was still just like. And it had two pairs of women's breasts on the front cover, and I was like, "This is just cringe, dude! Like, what are we doing? This is not when I hear this band and I listen to this record. This is not what I see." And we ended up changing the album cover, even though the art was fantastically done. The artist who drew it is an amazing artist. I'm looking at it also from a marketing point of view, and I'm like, I can't market this. I can't put this anywhere. It would just get blocked.
We've had a few of them, like Ben said, and Weregoat. We did a split CD with artwork like Dory, or was graphic, and I, like I said, it as long as it's not over, totally out of bounds, it's just part of it. That's all part of the.
It takes a lot to go out of bounds. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I get it.
Well, Ben's talking about a large portion of our releases. Go to our Bandcamp page, and you'll see everything is blotted out. I don't believe in censorship at all in really any form. I don't get involved with that. I mean, we haven't had anything yet that I've had to deny. We have some questionable artwork. Maybe the craziest that I have ever seen that nobody has seen yet other than myself. We had John Zig was commissioned to do new covers for Torso Fuck's putting out Erotic Diarrhea Fantasy with a real drummer, and he's done real art. And then the Semen Rot demo that nobody has heard yet. He's done artwork for that is going to get banned for sure. But
it's going to get banned. Yeah. Like, well, we did that Torso EP too, so.
Oh yeah.
So fuck, but Torso.
Yep.
But that's kind of where I'm at. I just, like I said, it's not my job. It's not my band. I mean, that's part of the release. If they approach me with this information and I see it, it's all part of whether I like it or not. You know what I'm saying? That's the bigger key, not whether for me if I can get it by all the censors and stuff.
Yeah, we give all the creative control, the artistic control, to the bands. The only time Dan and I really step in is when bands are making up words, which sometimes happens. Like, guys, come on, man, let's go.
Making up medical terms.
Yeah.
I have to spell this out 10 times in order to sell this album. Please make it legible.
So are there any kind of ethical regulations that you have for your bands? If it comes out like somebody's a domestic abuser, has done something, or is there any kind of thing where you've got a line for that? Do you care about that stuff? Do you watch that stuff? Or will you tolerate, racist bands or lyrics or whatever? Where are you at with that stuff?
Like I said, it's pretty easy. I mean, I don't get promos for NS bands or racist bands or anything. I think after 17 years, people kind of know what you're about. So they just don't approach you with that kind of stuff. So For me, it's pretty easy. I just kind of stay in my lane. If I don't like something, I don't like something. For whatever the reason is, whether, it might be a little sketchy or something. I don't know. I don't really, haven't had to worry about that. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as people getting busted doing things, or that's happened a couple times, and usually there's something in house, and there's not something that you can be okay with, because people aren't going to be okay with that. I'm not okay with somebody, some creep or somebody, raping some woman or something like that and still playing on a band on my label. I just, that's come to light a couple times, and in both cases they were just kind of dismissed from the band, but that's not my decision. It's something that I may have an interjection on. You know what I'm saying? Like I could make my input known about it, but ultimately it's not my decision. So
Yeah.
it's their decision. It's their decision whether they want to continue or not with that. I don't think anybody goes out and says, "Well, let me sign bands that have." Some might be apologetic towards it, like it's censorship, but it's not really censorship. It's just not having pieces of shit in bands on your label. And you may,
like you said,
and I'm not saying like everybody's an angel either, because I don't know what their lives are like. But if something comes to light, then you have to deal with it.
Usually the bands deal with it themselves, I feel like.
Right.
Most of the time you don't really have to step in. They're going to take care of it on their own, because 4/5 of the band are actually decent human beings, right?
Well, I mean, the perfect example for this is like, look at Phil Kusabs, from Bassifor, from Blasphemy and all that, when he got busted for that child porn shit. When we did stuff with Phil before, I had him off my Facebook for years earlier than that, but I don't even want to get into it, but he got ostracized. I mean, I dumped those Vassifor records in the trash. I'm not going to have, I'm not going to have that sitting on my shelf. There's no Vassifor records. They're in the trash. So, and the Blasphemy said they'll beat his ass if they ever see him again. So like I said, it's not hard to do, but sometimes, it happens. Things come to light and people are found out to be, creepy fucks. I mean, we pay taxes to them,
We've not had to really deal anything as a label, along the lines of what Ben had said. There have been some issues that the bands have all dealt with internally, which, they would catch even before it would probably get up the level for Dan and I have to deal with, but we haven't really had to deal with anything directly, no.
Very good. So, it can require a lot of sacrifice, right? Running a record label, no doubt. And can you give a little insight of like, how do you balance that with family, or what were the sacrifices you've had to make? How much of a struggle has it been in terms of what have you had to give up to make this happen?
I've had to give up more being a father than I had to give up running a record label. I feel like the past year, my second son is almost a year and a half, and both my wife and I were working from home, and we were juggling taking care of a baby while I was running the label throughout the day together. I'd be working nights, I'd be working weekends. This is the first time since I've moved here that I can actually put a full 8-hour day in, or try to, like, consecutively, right? Before it was just split up and I was just getting things done whenever I could get them done. I was never sacrificing my family for that. Mornings, daycare, driving, things of that nature, nighttime with my kids, those things were always super crucial. It was always the after hours or the before hours that I was, cramming and grinding everything in. But anything you love is a sacrifice, man. Time, anything you're going to be doing, you're sacrificing time. So just all depends on how you want to spend that time.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be able to, my kids are older now, so I can, kind of balance this however, it needs to be. Maybe some days you spend more time than others, but, not really having a clock in, clock out 9 to 5 is extremely helpful, I think. And like Matt mentioned earlier, I get up at 6 and, don't speak to any human until I have 4 or 5 cups of coffee, and then you just get on with it. But it hasn't really, I don't think it's affected anything that I've had to do, to compromise family life at this point, since my kids are all older now. So
me, it's early on when I started the label, like I said, I was active duty. So, at that time, my daughter was still living, out of state. So it's just me and my wife. So I had a lot of time in the evenings. I would take time and I would do those work type things in the evening, and on Saturdays and Sunday were my big work days. It was a lot of work back in those early days. I was kind of juggling two things. I found out pretty early that, kind of working for yourself, especially in an area where, like, I'm not running off to an office like Ben. Um, you have to set yourself boundaries. I do find myself checking emails and things like that at night and things like that. I might do some little things, but back in the earlier days, I'd work longer. I would work and work and work, but you get burnt out. So I had to kind of set some boundaries as far as my work schedule and what I want to do. I don't tend to answer a lot of emails on the weekend. I got to have my time away from that. I will answer the occasional email if I get up early and nobody's up. I might do a little bit of work, but you gotta set yourself the boundaries, and it's work. It is work.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to have your own separate time, because then all that stuff that you enjoy will start bleeding over and into your life and taking up that other part of your life that you enjoy, and then it makes things a little bit difficult. So I found setting the boundaries and kind of telling people, hey, look, I'll deal with this on Monday is the best way for me. Um, so I don't really have too much. I kind of, hey, well, let's get done. We'll get done. And I do my stuff. Sometimes I'll end up extending my work on my computer, just, and watching a movie or something like that. But this whole idea that, you got to be a slave to, 40 or 60 or 80 hours a week as if it's some kind of badge of honor. The only thing it does is end up hurting you. So
Right.
I've just kind of continued in that thinking that, work isn't something that defines me. It's not something, well, I'm a workaholic, that's like a good thing. No, it's not. It's not a good thing always to, not be there for your family or be there for your friends or something like that. You need your own time,
Do you have any horror stories of running a label? Like, is there a story each of you could share? Like, how do you deal with scammers? How do you deal with people that are just trying to get free stuff? Does anything stand out?
I wouldn't say I have any horror stories. I mean, there's been a few pop-up labels that have stolen money from me. Like, they obviously look like they're real, and I'm trying to wholesale distro from them, and they end up not being real at all. I'm dealing with an issue right now. I won't say the label, but I had pre-ordered a bunch of wholesale product back last May. Still never got it. I guess they're having a licensing issue, and I'm having a very, very tough time getting my couple $1,000 refund from said label. And if I told you the name, you'd be like, oh yeah, they're relatively famous. And it kind of blows my mind that it's being ran this horribly.
You just have to send
Right.
me a message on that one, who it was.
Yeah, I'll let you know so you can stay away from them.
I don't know. Like, luckily I haven't dealt with, any labels or anybody taking my money and not, I mean, I am dealing with somebody right now, an artist, for instance, that couldn't come through with some artwork for, an upcoming EP from Crips. But, I'm dealing with getting my money back, and now he's not answering me, so I may have to blast him pretty soon. So, it's not like it's a huge amount; it's a couple $100, but it's just the principle of it. Of course,
Right.
we've had people that have tried to game things. I for a while I was getting a lot of those. Like, oh, my record didn't come with a download. Like the last one I had of those, I posted it up on my page. He listed 2 records that didn't have download cards with them, and then he was telling me his download cards didn't work. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to spot the bullshit. Like I said, there's a couple like well-known scammers out there, and you run across them, and they'll place an order, and then you find out who it is, and you refund them and tell them fuck off, shit like that. But for the most part, I haven't had too much problems. It's just the normal stuff, maybe some disagreements, and some other things, but I haven't dealt with something, because that would piss me off right there.
I would have already made a bunch of posts and like tried to pressure them to give me my fucking money back because that's
Yeah,
bullshit.
I thought about blasting them on socials. Also, I need to do a PayPal claim against them specifically so I can get my money back because it's pissing me off.
We haven't had too many issues. I think the biggest thing is just bootleggers,
Yeah.
the Russian CD bootlegs we've had some issues with. And, there's companies that'll just take your art, take the band logos and try to sell their merch. And when we see it, most of the time we get it from our fans that say, hey, look what's going on. And we'll post it just so people know to stay away from it. That's just,
Yeah.
just somebody just trying to steal, artwork or music, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, the skull in my logo, speaking of stealing artwork, I found on a flyer for some decently well-known bands the other day, and I had to hit up the promoter. I was like, who made this? You guys blatantly just stole the skull out of my logo to plaster all over your flyer, but usually I don't see that very often.
I do remember maybe 12 or 13 years ago, somebody took our logo and took the name and just called their band or something called Dark Descent. I was like, holy shit, man, you just adopted it. And I had to talk to him. I was like, this is my record label. It's not, just some cool artwork you found in Google Images or something.
Yeah. Honestly, that's probably what happened with mine. I was cool about it, though. They probably didn't know, so it was whatever. I just thought it was funny.
So all of us are American labels. Can you give any thoughts about what obstacles have you faced in terms of trying to get your music to other parts of the world? International distro. We're going through weird times with a lot of these postal things changing very quickly. But how has this experience been for you, especially recently, or how has it changed?
It's always customs. It's always custom shit. It's always custom shit. Between, like, for instance, Grave Miasma tour that happened in Mexico a month, 2 months ago. I sent records down there to someone. They're always changing shit about your tax numbers. And I put the tax numbers on all the boxes. Sent it DHL. It was there 4 or 5 or 6 days before. Couldn't get them out. They sat there for 30 days before they returned. It's always some bullshit with customs. It's on this end or that end, and it's gotten a lot worse since all the custom shit has started at the beginning of last year. Because now when, other countries see you taking advantage, then they take advantage, and then it just becomes some bullshit for commerce. And the ones that are affected the most are people like us. They're not, Walmart's not affected. They're getting their stuff. All these other places, and people are buying their stuff. But for people like us, it's harder to deal with that, and it's harder to deal with the customers getting their stuff. I have lots of customers that email me, said they're not ordering from Europe right now. I was like, well, we have a lot of imported titles. It sucks. We'll keep trying to bring as much as we can in, but until you have faith that you can get stuff, maybe it's best to start looking your first option in the States, whether they're going to get it first. So there's all these kind of obstacles we're dealing with, and it's all bureaucratic bullshit.
Yeah, we've had, I think since the Trump administration has, put in all of these regulations with tariffs and customs. Customs has been, I've been, 30 plus years mailing things, even as a collector and a trader.
Yeah.
It has been a nightmare, especially some countries that, like Italy, will have a 30 to 45 day hold, before they release it. The cost for some people to receive, items in the EU is insane, twice the amount of what they pay for a CD. We do have a lot of international distributors which help. And I've been, recently recommending they go with FedEx and UPS, or courier service to get away from USPS. I think the security and the time is a lot quicker with that. We've had some horror stories sending USPS with custom holds and cost related to that. But I feel bad for fans that are looking for US label product, because it is, as Matt has mentioned, and I think even in the last year and a half is when we've seen the biggest disruption for those fans being able to get stuff from the States.
We've been, but to avoid some of that though, Ryan, is that I've been doing half and half pressing. So we have a European a store with the fulfillment center. So we've been doing runs CDs over in Europe and drop shipping to to our partners, and then also to our fulfillment center. If the band's in Europe, then it's a lot easier too. So we've done stuff to mitigate that. But it's still difficult. And to Ryan's point, it's not just USPS. That package that I said that was in Mexico, that was a DHL package. I've had FedEx sit and they've returned stuff. Yeah, so like the courier services are affected as well. So, but yeah, it's just all a bunch of nonsense right now.
It's made things a lot more expensive for me too, because I used to do some of our pressings as a co-release with a Brazilian label, and it was really cheap to press a lot of that stuff there. But now it's nearly impossible to get that stuff here without paying a fortune. Or even as a collector, it's very difficult because there's a lot of postal services due to these new regulations that won't ship to the U.S. at all. Maybe you can go with a third-party service, but then they're going to charge a whole lot more. So just as a collector trying to get some of these things that I really want in my collection, I might have to send it to like a third-party country and then send it here. So everything's, much more expensive than it was just my entire life until now. And so, yeah, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, Brazil specifically is not allowing. You could do a third-party courier, but their actual like national courier service is not sending anything to the United States. I've had a trade with the Brazilian label. Well, I already sent my half last August, and now he won't send me his half because he can't use his courier service. So I'm just out like 100 CDs or whatever I sent him while I'm just waiting for Brazil to be like, okay, we'll send stuff now. It's ridiculous.
A lot of places that won't. They're not shipping stuff here, so it's happening, but I don't know what the answer is, but we just keep trying. You know what I mean? I as far as my regular partners, Messick and Oho, they have a new obstacles to face. Is that most of the time what we're doing now is sending stuff direct duty, paid. Like we'll just do it, and so we're ending up spending more money to ship stuff wherever we need it to go, with the hopes that it's not going to sit there in customs or return back to us for whatever reason. So, it's like everything with doing this is that you have to adjust, and it's not a positive adjustment. I don't like to do this. It adds more steps. It adds more stress. It adds more cogs in the process. But if you don't adjust, then it's just going to end up getting squeezed out because that's just the way it is right now.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I hate is paying the tariffs. With the underground labels, it's not a big deal because they can manipulate the invoice to show of a specific value of product. But when you go through someone like Plastic Head, they're not going to do that. So if I'm spending $2,000 to $3,000 on distro with them, I'm going to pay $300 something plus extra just on a tariff. And when you look at the conversion rate of our currency and then the shipping cost, it's like, yeah, no wonder that Morbid Angel vinyl is $35 in my store. It's a ridiculous amount of money.
I paid tariffs one time before this stuff happened, one time, and it was a wholesale order to Peaceville, and they don't mark anything with wholesale prices or even low prices. He put retail, so it was over the de minimis at the time, and I ended up paying $11 tariffs, and that was like 10 years ago. Fast forward to 2025, and I can't say that anymore. Obviously,
no, it's ridiculous.
I currently got charged $975 for a tariff fee for some pallets coming from FedEx Freight from Czech Republic, but I had to fight it because I went and I wrote all the stuff about how records are and tapes are informational materials, and they're not even under supposed the tariff.
To be tariffed.
So I have a canned statement that I made, and I filed the dispute. But that's been going on 2 months now.
Send that to me. I need to use that because you're right. They're not supposed to be, these things are not they're not supposed to be tariffed at all.
But
these courier companies have no idea what they're doing.
Minus that if you get through with the tariffs, because I've been stuck a couple times, and found out later they were tariffs. But even if you get past that, is that you still are paying extra money to do things like DDP now, when before I didn't do it. So I'm still paying more money regardless. Not only that, but the prices for shipping just stupid now. Anyway.
So can we take a minute and talk a little bit about reissues? So Dark Descents brought some classics back from like Time Ghoul and Morpheus Descends and Depravity. During Ryan, your time in New Standard Elite, you've reissued even a lot of New Standard Elite stuff that was starting to go for larger amounts on Discogs and everywhere else. And also, so prior to your time, there has been some reissues on New Standard Elite, like Deprecated's 1998 classic, right? Deriding his creation. But can you give me a little insight into that process? How difficult is it to put out a reissue? And Ben, I don't know if you have anything here, if that's something you're getting into or not, but can you give us some insights into the people that say, oh, can you put out this someday? What is the process? How difficult is that process?
I don't have a ton to talk about because I don't do a lot of reissues. I've done a couple, and I do have a couple planned for this year. One being a pretty fairly large 3-format reissue that I'll be doing.
Tell us who it is, Ben.
About.
Don't hide.
I can't tell you.
On Kyle's podcast, break it right now.
I can't, dude. I can't, man.
I mean, people are gonna watch. It's free advertising, Ben.
It's too exciting. It's too exciting. I gotta keep it close to the vest. But other than that, I would love to do more reissues. There's a ton of old school brutal death metal bands or just old school death metal bands from the '90s that I would love to do. The problem is getting a hold of anyone. From
right.
I don't have the time to be a headhunter most of the time because a lot of these guys are so far removed from they don't even know that their band is popular now. You know what I mean? So like it just takes forever. And I'm not on Facebook because I'm banned from it because they think I'm a bot. So I can't, and that's where all these old heads are. They're not on Instagram. I can't find emails. So like you need to see like someone that's dedicated to doing reissues. Unless you go, I have a couple. I have a contact with Century Media and labels like that. There's a lady that does all licensing for those. So those are the easy ones. A lot of the reissues you see from some of these labels are done through that, which is the easy route. The hard route is hunting down the stuff that's not owned by a major record label that not many people have heard of either, but would be a cool reissue, at least from what I could tell.
And I haven't done any of the easy route. I've never done an easy route one.
And it's tough, isn't it?
I've never used a big label and had them to license it. I don't want to do that. I just never have. I mean, I've had offers. Our first one I want to say was that Toxemia comp was, I think, our first one in 2010. And I worked with Ted from the Crypt together on that, and we've had a relationship ever since then. We've done a number of them over the years, but it's lessened over the last 5 for sure. I think I want to say the last one that we did was the Jim Jones. We've repressed the Depravity CD. The Jim Jones one from a couple years back, I think, was the last one. Those and Maimed and Time Ghoul was Time Ghoul is definitely the biggest seller. We've sold thousands and thousands of those CDs. For a while, it was like our biggest reissue seller. But I kind of like to do reissues. There's things, like I said, like that Jim Jones record, I think is really cool. I think it was underappreciated. It still is. We still have some records and they should all be gone. But I was talking with Eric actually today about this, is that reissues are good, but you sell what you're going to sell. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's never any real surprises. You might sell your run out and it's really cool. And then maybe 10 years later, you'll do another reissue and you get it out. But there's never any of that hysteria like when you press a new band. You know what I mean? You never get that same kind of, wow, this kind of blew up and created something like Blood Incantation or created something like Thanafaxath, where people are still asking for more and more represses. You know what I'm saying? So I do enjoy doing the reissues, but I think there's also a place for them. And it's not something I want to be necessarily known for, but something that I have done and brought light to projects, So it's kind of a give and take on that. I like to do them. I enjoy doing them. I enjoy bringing that old stuff back, but at the same time, mostly my job is exposing new bands to audiences.
Yeah, we do some. I think, as Matt mentioned, we try not to do a ton because it takes away from, a lot of the new releases, which we have so many coming out. But Cerebral Fusion, Idolatry, Ominous, Gorgasm, Disentomb Misery, was one that we repressed as well. I think a lot of it comes from our distributors when they run out and they keep asking for more, and we get just volumes of requests from fans that kind of pushes it. And I think some of the more well-known bands that are kind of getting a rebrand with the new fans, that's where we see a lot of the requests from those initial popular releases that sold out.
So do you each have, just squeeze a couple ones in here, so is there like a proudest moment for you, or are you really proud, like, oh, I discovered kind of these bands and put them out into the world, or what are some of the highest peaks you've climbed, or even that you're still trying to climb? What are the high points of this experience for you so far?
I guess I don't know. It seems like I'll just talk first, but for me, I think the thing that I get enjoyment for is I sit behind that desk and we sit and we're isolated from stuff for so long. When I go out, when I go to a show, when I go to a fest, and I see a lot of people wanting to come over and talk to me, or talk about the releases, or they want to talk about how excited they are. I mean, I remember going to MDF maybe 10 years ago, 2017, and there was like 3 guys lined up to talk to me about running the label and stuff. And, I was like, what's going on? So I was talking to some guy, and there was a couple guys waiting. And I was like, hey, you guys waiting for something? Yeah, we're waiting to talk to you. There was a line to talk to me. So I was like, why? So, I mean, it's cool. I don't necessarily always feel the impact just sitting here on a day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? It's not until I get out that I see how it impacts people. So for me, it's just the fact that, I'm a guy that's, I don't consider myself anything special. I've done some cool stuff over, my lifetime, but I find it really satisfying when people are really enjoying it, when they send you emails talking about how much they love your label and how much it means to them. I mean, I've been doing it so long now that you get the generational kids now, like, hey, I was 17 when I found this release, and now I've been listening to Dark Descent, for the past 10 or 12 years. That's freaking amazing, man. So for me, I find that my biggest accomplishment is that the impact that I'll have on some people that will listen to Dark Descent releases even after I'm gone. The way that, I did with Earache releases or some other label, you know what I mean? But and I also look back and I look, their Earache's had a 6-year run where they were really killer. It's a lot of great releases, but that's it. They've been coasting for decades, and you know what I'm saying? Like, that peak was special, and people still talk about it. I would love that. I would love that. That would be, a crowning achievement. I mean, it's really cool to have bands chart on Billboard charts. It's really cool to go see a show and see Blood Incantation playing in front of 3,000 people and knowing that you released their first 3. It's really satisfying, and it's a cool thing. But I think the biggest satisfaction I get is just talking to people. It means a lot more than they think when I get an email like that. It does. It gives me incentive to keep going sometimes too. That's my most satisfying moment doing
Yeah, I would agree 100% with what he just said. Like, I'm a big proponent on community building in general, and I've talked about that in any interview I've done or podcast or what have you. The engagement you get with fans or supporters of your label and the bands you're releasing, that's by far the best part. Just seeing someone on YouTube go, man, this label kicks ass right now. It's like, oh, thanks, dude.
Customer number one.
I work really hard at this.
Customer number one still orders from us. I love it. You know what I'm saying? I send him a message when he orders. Thanks again, Jeff. I got a guy on Facebook named David. He's placed 750, 800 orders with us since the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are maniacs, man. Like, I always think about, like, during the lean times, people like this are what kept it going. So that's the thing. The fact that this guy's still back, he's still buying stuff 17 years later.
Matt, I remember one time before I used to buy from you before I was wholesaling from you.
I
just as a
remember. I
fan.
remember.
You
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
know the name. You probably recognize my
Yeah,
name.
I know. I already
There
know.
was one time that I was looking for that first Phrenolith album, Desolate Inscape, and if I just randomly asked you, "Hey man, I see this is sold out," and you just kind of like dug in and found some like the very last random copy, and I was like, "Dude, Dark Descent for life!" You just made me so fucking happy just finding that one record.
I did that. I did that to a guy like last week too. I found him a copy. One guy emailed me asking for an Uncanny CD. We haven't had any. I said, I'll be looking for you. If I find one, I'll let you know. So just things you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that's kind of cool is, that I knew a lot of and still know, most of our diehard, NSC fans, before I was running the label. And, I'm no different than any NSC fan. I'm looking, for the same stuff. I get excited when you hear something new. But I think the two things is, one, as Matt mentioned, we have people that are beyond diehards. Like we got a dude in the UK, Lee Peak, who owns every piece of NSC product that's ever been made. Other than the NSC archives, he's probably has the largest collection of NSC stuff in the world. There's a lot of people that are like that they just assume and hope and know that we're going to put out what they like, and they just buy it. They're not even listening to it. They're buying the merch, they're buying the CDs. But as far as anything that, I could put my finger on, I think it's the number of young fans we've got in, especially the young bands that are not only passionate about their bands, but the scene and the label itself. And I'm 54. I'm not going to be doing this forever. We've got to get these younger guys that are passionate about the scene in particular, and then hopefully the label that are going to continue when the old guys are gone.
So great transition there, because next I want to ask you all about what do you want to happen after you retire from doing this? Like, what do you want to happen to your label? Most labels, right, have a short kind of shelf life and just kind of disappear. What do you want to happen though when you don't want to do this anymore? What's next for your label?
I mean, I put zero thought into that, as only being 38 and only been doing this for 3 years. But I will say that metal has been, part of my life for a very long time, music in general, and I try to instill that in my sons. And they are catching on to it, which is great. You don't have a ton of control over the things they like, but man, if they tell mom to turn off, Taylor Swift because they want to hear dad's music, that's what they hear all day, every day. It's almost the only thing they know. So it would be cool to see it be a family thing eventually. But I have absolutely no idea what happens when this maybe it just gets buried with me.
Ben, I remember. Sorry, Matt.
Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
I remember. I'll date myself a little bit since you appear to be the young guy in this panel. I remember riding my bike to pick up Possessed 7 Churches when it was released in the mid 80s. So
it was released the year I was born.
Yeah, thanks. Great.
Ben is 38. That's what age I was when I started.
Yeah. See, I'm gonna be you, just with less hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. I hope that it, like I said, that there is a new group of young, dedicated guys that like the scene that we can, pass the torch to. It's not, this label's not going to die when I'm done. We'll obviously make sure that there's the right group or right person to continue on.
I have put a little bit of thought in that, mostly because I'm not in year 2 like Ben. It's a little bit farther along in the process, but I always thought that Dark Descent was just gonna die with me. It's always, my baby. I have Eric, and he's more than competent than to do this stuff. And he'd mentioned something about, when it's all said and done, maybe, but I don't know, knowing him, if he's got the right stuff for it, because, there's a lot of things that he wouldn't put up with. So, and you have to. So I don't really know. Like the main thing that I would like to do is get all my space back and get, all the records gone. That would be job number one. At one point, maybe the label won't survive, but all of my records will, and we'll have to liquidate that. But I never really thought about it outside of that. It probably will die with me, because that's just what it is. People always view Dark Descent as, you form your own identity. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like a big corporate major label. People identify Dark Descent Records with me, at least those that know. So I don't know. It's like when somebody sells a small record label. And I think there was one, I remember one guy, because I remember him, he had that Testimony label. And he was my rep for working overseas for my overseas distributor. I mean, he just happened to have his own label, but he sold this small label, and it's being run by other people and stuff like that. I don't know if people recognize a difference, something like that, and I don't think that will carry over as far as the importance. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same as if your favorite ball player or your favorite musician leaves a band. You know what I mean? You lose a little bit of that credibility about what it is. So I'm not so sure. And like Ryan's at New Standard Elite seems a little different. Sounds like they have a big team family thing kind of going on with it, which is really cool. And in that case, where they have Dan still providing information to them and helping out and still being there, that's a little bit different. But as far as just turning the reins over to somebody, outside of just selling all the stock, I've just figured the name and the label itself would die out with me.
Ryan, did you get much pushback when you took over? Did you get many people that were like, oh, it's not as good as it used to be, everything will be different, like that kind of stuff?
I mean, the people that knew me and my relationship with Dan knew that it was going to be fine. I think people that didn't know were wondering, who's this clown? What is this going to turn into? And then I think, it helped with, the bands that we were signing. I'm sure there are some people that are annoyed, because the label has changed and we've got some blowback, why are you selling hats? What are you selling shorts? Because part of my background was in sports marketing. So
they just maggot stomp.
But look, a lot of what we're putting out is not just me just pulling it out of my ass. We've had fans that have, hats have been one of our biggest sellers, that,
right.
Has really been pushed by the demand of what people want. I'm not going to make stuff and have it sit on the shelves, so, a lot of what we've done outside of just the original short sleeve, long sleeve hoodie, model that Dan had has really been pushed by the fan base.
Yeah. So are there any final thoughts, anything that any of you want to share that we haven't covered? Just anything you want to tell anybody watching about what it's like to run a label that maybe we haven't covered?
I can't believe this has lasted almost 2 hours now. This is pretty crazy. Man, they're upstairs. There's some smells from my son. I don't know what it is, so I got to go check on that pretty soon. I know people enter into doing something like this full of piss and vinegar. They've got the gung-ho attitude, and I had it. I wanted to be up there. I wanted to feel like everybody was a competitor, or at least they were less than the label. But I learned somewhere early on that Ben's not in competition with me. Ryan's not in competition with me. Hell's Headbangers isn't in a competition with me. Nuclear War Now's not in $20. There are people that in some cases $20 or Nuclear War Now confide in too, and I ask questions with, and we speak. These are people that you can all gain knowledge from. I've had people contact me, wanted to speak to me about things, and that's fine. I just pay it forward. I think the biggest thing that you should realize is that there's just really no half-assing it. If you want to be a part-time label and you do occasional releases and things like that, and it's not something where a band's depending on you to provide them with some promotion and things, continue with doing that. But it kind of make some kind of full-time job, it can be kind of intimidating, when things fill up and all kinds of orders come in and bills come in, so you have to kind of decide early on what you want to do and what you want to get out of it. Because if you don't, then things can kind of get away from it and be a little bit different than you intended it to be. So I would suggest that anybody taking on, a label nowadays, just kind of start easy and just make sure it's something that you want to do rather than something that you get caught up with and then the time passes and then you just wonder how you're going to get out of it. It's going to take a while. Even when I say I'm going to stop one day, just to cut off the pipeline, all the guys that I've already committed to releasing. You saw the list that I posted. It was like 8 or 10 of them. And those are releases I have in hand, and that's not even the ones that are almost done. So for me, I think it is just make sure you do research. I had the opportunity early on to utilize things like the Nuclear War Now forum. If I don't know if any of you guys remember, but back then it was a great resource. Yosuke had a do-it-yourself thread on there, and it was 60, 70, 80 pages on there, and it was full of great information. I used that. I read over all of it before I started. I talked to people that knew about pressing records. I reached out to people, and some people didn't help. And I remember those that didn't help, and I don't ask them for any questions anymore. But there's some people that still do and continue to do, and I just do the same thing. So,
yeah, if you could find a Sherpa, it's an amazing thing to find. I remember I didn't ask around too often. I probably should have asked more. I've always just kind of been a do-it-yourself type, like just fail as you go through it. You know what I mean? Which isn't always the best method. But like people like Johnny from Frozen Screams has been with me for day one. It gave me a ton of advice on how to do specific things. Even though he is a very relatively small label, you can learn a lot by just talking tidbits with anyone really. But I'm too young in this, man, to have this grand scheme final voyage like Mr. Matt over here, who's
Ben,
going on 2 decades with it.
I think Matt has us all beat on time and stories and maybe sharing more experiences over 17 years. I mean, and maybe I'll be if I would last that long would maybe be more on the lines of Matt as far as taking the good with the bad. I've not really experienced a lot of bad yet, just being 3 years. Again, if it wears on you, if it's like, you wake up, more of this NSC shit, I mean, it's just not going to work. I think so as long as, there's, some drive and interest and just kind of that fan-based passion, which is how I kind of deal with this label. If I'm not excited about new releases and working with bands and getting things out and creating, merch, and it just seems like, you've got that 9-to-5 job. I mean, nobody's getting mega rich off this thing. I mean, the amount, right. Matt was talking about the number of releases he has coming out. We have 16 releases that are coming out in the next 45 days or so. And it's tens of thousands of dollars that you have to get this out before you're recouping, especially with us not doing pre-orders. So, there is some stress involved, but thankfully people are interested. They're buying the merch. So, I think as long as the fans are interested in this label and this genre, we'll keep going.
Yeah, and I hope people watching too realize that there was a lot of build up to that point, right? Not necessarily spending that much right out of the gate. That would be a brutal process. But I just want to thank you all for conversing with me today, conversing with each other. Did you all know each other? Have you met each other before?
Ben was a customer. I recognized his name when he started sending me Iron Fortress. I said, "Oh, that's Ben. He used to order from us." So I did recognize him. I haven't spoken or didn't know Ryan previously. So, Yeah,
I didn't know Matt. Just met the first time. But Ben and I have shared some emails. But first time meeting him in person.
Yeah, I'm always hunting down every label, man. What do you got that's new for me? I'm hungry.
Yep.
Yeah, but thank you guys so much, though. Like, I've been a huge New Standard Elite fan for a long time, been a huge Dark Descent fan for a long time. I'm one of the few death metal fans that seems to really enjoy both of those camps, where I feel a lot of people are one or the other, right? For old school stuff versus brutal stuff. Ben, it's incredible what you've managed to accomplish in such a short period of time. And really, just I've heard a lot of people just toting that, like, oh, we've got this new young generation of death metal, and they you seem to be really giving them something to latch onto. And I mean, all of us love this music for a multitude of reasons. It feels great to listen to. It's gotten us through different things. It's a passion, right? This word keeps coming up, this theme during our chat today. A passion. That's why you all do it. So just thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time today. I hope everybody really enjoyed this conversation and hearing your different insights. So yeah, I look forward to everything you continue to do, and I hope none of you retire anytime soon. So thanks again.
Yep.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having
Thanks,
me.
DePaoli.
So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. So for me, it was just great just being able to be this nerdy death metal fan and watching some of these titans just interact with one another. I really enjoyed that. So hopefully you did too and got some insights about what the experiences are like running a death metal label, especially once it's established and at least a few years in. Some of these have been around quite a bit longer than that, right? And are pretty good size labels now. Would you like to see me talk to more people that run different labels? I'd especially like to talk to some people that run labels in other areas of the world. So let me know in the comments if there's anybody in particular you'd like to see me chat with next. Other than that, please feel free to like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you hit that subscribe button, I can bring you more of this stuff more often. And so other than that, I'll catch you next time. Keep it brutal.